Okay, everyone, 2 on the dot. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today. My name is Cam. I am the CEO of Investapal, and I'm joined with Michelle from Nifty Advisor Support. So what we're going to cover off today, how you can optimize your RIA for growth through digital onboarding and through virtual assistants. So just a quick background. My name is Cam. I am a former, while still practicing quant. I've worked with hundreds of different investment professionals, all the way from pension funds down to retail investors. But my bread and butter has always been with investment advisors. I ended up leaving that to found Investapal. Really, what we're all about, our primary goal is to help equip you with the time savings and with the toolkit to foster better client relationships and to make sure you're focused in on growing your book, not in on all the back end monotony that you're forced to.
Hello, everyone. I am Michelle. I'm the founder CEO of Nifty Advisor Support. I've been in the financial services industry for 13 years now, but I've been working with dispersed teams for the past 15. My start, I was recruited for an advisor for a couple advisory firms, and I found my way in client servicing operations at a couple of the largest RAs in the DMV area where I was unfulfilled. I wanted to work remotely and provide flexibility for myself and those around me. And that's where Nifty came to be. So Nifty is currently a little over 6 years old, and we are a human experience agency that provides talent and client experience solutions for advisors.
So a little bit about what we're going to cover today. We'll introduce what the current advisor landscape looks like, how we're seeing it primarily through the lens of the clients we work with today and who we're helping, a little bit around what we're seeing in the industry overall as well, and then get into the actual takeaways, so ways that you can automate your practice, whether that's through Investapal or other different softwares, and how you can leverage AI with that. And then also on virtual assistants, on how you can outsource and augment a lot of your practice with the help of a virtual assistant. If there is any questions you have while we are talking, there is a Q&A option on Zoom here that you can put any of your questions into. And at the end of this, we'll review all those questions to dive in, answer anything that may be of help for you. So if we look at the current advisor landscape, I think Michael Kitcey's put out this report a year or so ago. It's not shocking to see a lot of advisors only spend about 20% of their day on actually building out client relationships and growing their book. So that means 80% is focused in on the back office. And we see a lot of time being spent on compliance management. There's Reg BI coming into the fold now where advisors are spending a ton of time on all the paperwork behind that, making sure they're staying compliant. Also on just the portfolio management side, where, it could take, if you're a discretionary portfolio manager, a lot of your day researching different investments, building up client portfolios, monitoring those portfolios, and then also on the client onboarding piece, where the turnaround times could be upwards of 2 or 3 weeks. And there's always the promise that new technology will come in, help save your day. But if you look at that, referencing Michael Kitcey's again, you look at the advisor tech map, there's a lot of wealth tech systems out there. There's over 400. And while they are good in their own light, what it can also introduce is a fragmentation where now you have to worry about how these systems integrate and operate together to still be valuable to you, and also to provide a unified client experience. Like, you don't want your clients having to log into 5 different systems to get an answer. You want something that is unified for them. So while technology has helped, it also introduced another layer of complexity on your end on making sure these all integrate cohesively with one another. And then finally, The area that we focus a lot of our time on is on onboarding challenges. So, scanning account statements, building out proposals, building out portfolio analyses. It can end up taking a lot of time away from that advisor to make sure they're delivering a good service to that new client that they're onboarding.
I totally agree with what Cam is saying. And a lot of firms have amazing ideas, but struggle to find the time to really optimize their processes and attack in a way that works for them and their team. So we're really excited to help provide some solutions and what we've seen advisors do.
So the one area that we've been able to help out a lot of our clients on the digital onboarding side is increasing the time to value. And what I mean by that is, today it might take that 1 to 3 week turnaround time to get something back to your client. And why is that? Today that advisor might be spending a lot of time parsing out those account statements. You get something from your client, it is in PDF format. You have to ingest that into whatever portfolio management solution you're leveraging. And as a result, you're spending a lot of time on just monotonous tasks. So, an area that you can end up applying that client onboarding help to is really around the technology stack that you're using. What we've been able to do is unify that client onboarding experience where you can change up that process. You can get the client to send you information before you ever meet. We'll automatically parse those account statements with our AI system to build into our portfolio analysis that you can then build proposals off of, streamlining a lot of that workflow. And this really helps unlock for that advisor the ability to build a deeper relationship. Oftentimes when you're trying to build a deeper relationship with a client, there's a trade-off with the amount of time you have to spend on that. The one area we've been helping with is around applying AI to specific use cases. So that assistance is hyper focused around, in our sense, portfolio management and compliance management. There's obviously, we'll dive into it a little bit deeper in this discussion, but leveraging a chat GPT might not be the best use case because it can end up hallucinating, but being hyper focused in on a specific technology that is trained to perform that task can help unlock a deeper level of personalization for you and how you service your clients. When we think a little bit about the advisor sales process today, and you look at like why it takes maybe 1 to 3 weeks to turn something around, if we dig a little bit into that sales process that advisor is conducting today, they're spending maybe 2 or 3 client meetings. And that first meeting is a Q&A. It's the advisor sitting down with their client and asking them a lot of questions about themselves. Like, Michelle, what is your net worth? What is your income? What is your expenses? And that opens the door for not the best first experience that that client is having with you. Like everyone wants today instant gratification. They want instant value. And it's your job to end up providing that value right out of the gate. The other area with that, to echo my previous point, is around the account statements. It's not surprising to get a PDF report from someone's Schwab account that has like 100 individual holdings in it. And you have to go in, or one of your support staff has to go in, parse all of that out to go and build up a portfolio comparison. And then afterwards, you have to spend the time to focus in on, okay, how am I going to tweak this individual's current investments so it relates back to their risk level or relates back to their financial goals, build up a proposal, and then actually review that with a client. So what we've been helping our advisor clients with is getting that 1 to 3 weeks down to about 1 day. And where that comes into the fold is how you interact with that client. So like at InvestApel, for example, we have a client onboarding form that our advisors send to the client before they ever meet. And we'll ask them a lot of the same questions you would ask in that first meeting. We'll be able, as an output from that, have their portfolios, identify their risk, and identify their behavior. It'll build out a portfolio analysis automatically that will also get fed to create a proposal. And what that means is that first meeting moves away from a Q&A discussion to a conversation around how me, the advisor, can help you. I already have an understanding of Michelle's wealth, her financial picture, her goals, and now I can change that discussion to how I can provide you value. And what that means is the close rates for you go up dramatically. And it also means, in that 1 to 3 week period where you might be in today, that client doesn't have the need to go and chat with other advisors potentially. You're providing them instant value, and it means your pipeline, your timeline decreases dramatically, increasing the amount of time and attention you can refocus back in on building up your book. Two of the lowest hanging fruit areas that we're seeing advisors apply AI today is in your conversations and in your portfolios. So what I mean by that is in your conversations, today you might be conducting a meeting and you were using pen and paper to record keynotes from that conversation. What that ends up doing is it takes your time and your attention away from actually having a conversation with the client. What you can end up leveraging is an AI note taker. Let's say you're on Zoom or even in the office, it will dictate the conversation for you. It'll extract a summary of the conversation, the key takeaways, any sort of follow-ups as well. So you don't have to worry about taking all of those notes down. You can focus more of your time, your attention on that client instead, and go back to that note taker retroactively to look at the summary and the key takeaways from that. On the portfolio level, we see two different models typically being applied, and both have their pros and cons. Either an advisor is deploying model portfolios for their clients. So I'm doing a risk assessment on my client. And based on that given level of risk, I will assign them into one of my models. Maybe they're a conservative investor, so I'll put them in my conservative model. This allows for scalability, but removes that personalization aspect we were talking about before. On the flip side, you could look towards discretionary portfolio management, where you're building up a unique portfolio specific to that client or that client's individual account. But then you're forced to spend all the time on investment research. And you're not necessarily Jim Simons, and that's totally fair. You don't have to be. But you can end up having a bit of the best of both worlds with one area that we've been hyper focused in on, which is personalized portfolio construction. So what this provides is, let's say you're running a portfolio or a given universe off of 50 individual funds. You could feed those individual funds into InvestaPal. And from that, we can optimize the holdings for the asset location, the specific interests of those clients, and their given level of risk. So what we can go and do is, let's say at a household level, you have to open up 3 accounts. We can help you on those individual accounts to optimize those 50 funds you're selecting from, or from a given stock universe of 2 or 3,000 securities to build up a completely unique portfolio for each of those clients' accounts that relates back to their overall interest and risk level. Michelle, curious to pause there where you're seeing AI being applied today on your end.
So the one thing that I find advisors have challenges with, because AI is very new, it's unmarked territory. Where do I exactly start? Kind of using your example, a lot of advisors, they want to figure out a way to still have that personal touch where they can still do things manually, but they also have an AI element to it. So going to your pen and paper note taking, one question that I get from advisors all the time is, I want to automate my note taking. I absolutely hate doing it, but I also feel, I'm able to show up as an advisor a lot better when I am writing pen to paper in a meeting, because a habit. It's something that advisors enjoy doing, where one way that they can implement is just, you write manual notes digitally on like a tablet, have it turn to text, and then plug it into AI to summarize and organize the notes. It's a really easy way to kind of introduce without completely overhauling your process. And then from there, once you develop that habit, you can really have AI take over the entire note taking process once you build that trust with that system. But I do have a question for you. Why do you feel advisors are reluctant to using AI or automating their workflows or systems?
Good question. I think there's a natural hesitation based on what we're seeing out of LLMs today. Like if you were to go into ChatGPT and ask it to build you something, let's say like I'll be hyper focused.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say you wanted to build you a best interest statement. It will go and potentially hallucinate. It's funny, I was actually having this conversation with an advisor yesterday who said he was using it for investment policy statements.
Mm-hmm.
And it only ended up getting to like a 20% accuracy level based on the information that advisor provided it. So when you actually look at what it's doing, if it's only helping you about 20% of the way, you're still having to go back with a fine-tooth comb and parsing through all of the outputs it gave you and editing everything. And I don't know if that's actually giving you any time savings. So, looking for like a generic tool like ChatGPT can be helpful in like broad applications, but I would be very cognizant on how you deploy that for a more nuanced question that you're asking it. One example of that we've been helping with is on like the investment policy side, where we have our AI model grounded against the SEC rulebook. Same with Reg BI. So we go and upload the SEC data sets, the rule books for um, advisors for Reg BI specifically. So any answers it's providing, it's always cross-referencing back to that training set to make sure it's actually not hallucinating. And because we're collecting a lot of that information from the client on the onset, it's not creating any sort of fake numbers in between or fake answers in between. It's grounded in reality, both from the inputs we're providing it, but also as a backstop, what the SEC is being able to allow advisors to input into these forms. So
Especially for something like that, where it's very industry specific and it's something that needs to be compliant.
exactly, like I think if you're looking to use Chat GPT and it's like a project plan, a marketing strategy, it's great. If you're looking at applying it to something very nuanced, like a compliance function, I would look towards a technology that is focused in on that rather than a broad application.
Mm-hmm. You need, what I've learned, because I've sat on quite a few AI webinars, is that you need to be very specific and detailed in terms of the prompt that you're giving ChatGPT. Otherwise, it just spits out like fluffy material that is not relevant for your use case. So I totally get it.
100%. You can even see it on LinkedIn. You can tell when like anyone uses ChatGPT to make like a LinkedIn post, just by the way it uses like emojis, the use of like the word delve, I think has like a 1,500% increase. You can tell in like academic research. It's not something that we use in our common vocabulary, but for some reason, the training set that ChatGPT was deployed on loves to use that word. So if you are looking at deploying it for like marketing, to your point, Michelle, like on your prompt level, you might have to also specify to use a common language to remove certain words to move away because like people are becoming very aware that content can be mass generated now with AI, which is a good thing, but you do have to be very cognizant of how you're using it.
I always make a joke that Chat GPT, it sounds like somebody has like a teacup and they're sipping with their pinky in the air and then they decide to spit out something on Chat GPT. So, um, awesome. So going into the different aspects of what a client looks for in a financial advisor or investment manager is really they're deciding to work with you because they trust you. They want someone that's reliable and also competent in terms of the value that you're providing to them. So the way we define that at Nifty, to build trust, you need to have a very strong digital marketing strategy to show your reliability. Like, how do you serve them? Is the quality up to par to their standards? Can they rely on you for any transaction, money movement, paperwork, even just speaking through their emotions, whatever they may be going through? But then lastly, with financial planning and investment management, do you have the skill set and the education to accomplish their goals? So a lot of the challenges that we see within digital marketing, the way that we define it is really making sure that you're developing trust, not just with prospects, but also nurturing your clients and really developing a presence for you to be able to recruit new team members. Because the first place that they go to is, your website, social media, the campaigns that you put out. But creativity is not typically an advisor's top skill set. So the challenge is lack of creativity, lack of marketing workflows and time, lack of marketing strategy, and just too unfocused. In marketing, you're always distracted. You feel as if you have to do everything. But the approach that we take at Nifty is really making sure that your strategy is consistent and makes sense for your niche and demographic. So when it comes to AI, the way that you can utilize AI within your digital marketing is using it to conduct research and also use AI generated or assisted writing, podcasts, videos, and photos. There are quite a few tools out there that can do it all for you and at least take off some of the lift where from once you utilize that system, you can see what additional talent you need on top of that. And then similar to client servicing and financial planning, any type of business aspect, workflows are just as important in digital marketing as they are in servicing and planning. So one way that I utilize it, aside from, I primarily use AI for writing, but even creating like marketing project plans, like how do I just get started and have that foundation, and you can always build on top of that. Next, with client servicing, the perfect RA has workflows and templates before they even bring on a team member. But a lot of these, I'm sure you don't have all your workflows fine-tuned or templates fine-tuned. So the lack of templates or foundational workflows, lack of organization, AI can assist with that. Really starting from creating communication templates, whether it's email templates, meeting agendas, internal, external communication. It's a really easy way. And I always say that nothing's ever set in stone. You can generate something once, but then you can assess it on an ongoing basis to see if something still makes sense for your business. And then lastly, for financial planning, lack of confidence in education around what you're providing your clients due to a lack of time and just limited resources if you are a solo, a smart, or a small team. And the best tools to assist with that, there's so many industry and non-industry systems out there like InvestPal that can help with that aspect. But then also utilizing AI to tailor your communication and value to different niches and demographics. Like every niche has a certain communication style depending on the age group. They have different financial challenges as well. So being able to tailor that down and really have another sounding board to assist you through this entire process, or what we call the entire client experience, is really important in terms of making sure you're leveraging AI properly.
One question on that, Michelle. I see we've had in the poll as well, there's people are looking around the client servicing side. Do you have any advice around how to tailor the conversation between like an older demographic versus like a younger demographic and like what they're usually looking for?
First is the method of communication. So whether it's through email, phone, meeting, no. Younger demographic, you usually can do things a little bit more digitally. But I always say that, assess your clients to see what communication methods they prefer rather than trying to guess it yourself. And then from there, really build out those templates and engage with your clients to see, hey, does this make sense to you? Is this communicating the value that you expected when you joined or became a client of my firm? It just initiating that engagement just makes things so much easier. And, a lot of the mental work in terms of decision making is a thing rather than just go to the source. So that's my advice, at least. That does a lot of heavy lifting.
Okay, nice answer.
So what exactly is virtual assistance? So virtual assistance is really any type of support role. So it's not confined to just administrative assistance. It can take the form of digital marketing and parent planning as well. But really what we're getting to is effective virtual assistance, which requires you as the advisor to really show up as a leader and have a full understanding of how to communicate and plan and delegate with other members on your team, whether they're outsourced to a virtual assistant or they're in-house. The quickest way to efficiency, even if you're a solo or small advisor, is every time you create a new project or task, really answer the 5 W's and how. So what that means is if we go over the 5 W's and how, who's responsible for it, what's happening, like what's the goal of it, where is it supposed to be captured, when is it due, why is this important, and how. So like the instructions for completing the project or the task. So this comes into play with our work where you might be completing custodian paperwork, you're trying to figure out how to create a social media post, you're developing a new plan or investment recommendation. And then once you have all your 5 W's and how all in a row, that's when you automate and AI-mate your workflows and processes, because you really need to do the legwork to see how it looks manually, to make sure that you're being intentional in terms of the way that you're automating your systems and figuring out how to incorporate AI into those workflow and processes. Because if you do the opposite, you'll have to do more iterations of reinventing the wheel and having to reassess your workflows where you're making updates to it every single week or what it feels like every single day. And we want to do as much as we can up front to make sure it makes sense for you and also your team, where you're eventually spending less time and money in the long run. And where virtual assistants is really unique is because we are working with so many different stakeholders, financial advisors. We see so many different best practices within how people are using their technology processes. You actually shorten the learning curve by quite a bit, and your virtual assistant can actually help you answer some of these W's and how if you're not able to understand it yourself, or even update or make the W and how so much more efficient than what you're currently doing.
So is it fair to say it's essentially like I'm hiring someone almost from Upwork, but being very hyper specialized in the RIA space, so I don't have to get them up to speed. You can kind of parachute in and figure things out.
Mm-hmm. At Nifty, we don't focus on general virtual assistants, which is not industry specific. We're geared towards client servicing like investment operations work, meeting prep and follow up. And in the fintech space, the training curve or the barrier to entry is very high, and also those in client servicing are slim. So being able to lean in early and have your processes be streamlined and efficient from the very beginning, virtual assistance helps with all those aspects. We are definitely, and I've heard from our clients, are very premier compared to the other solutions that are out there. So I want to share some strategies to help maximize your productivity. As you can finally spend more time with your clients that you spent so much time prospecting for. So top things, delegating what least excites you or skills that you're least confident in, whether you decide to outsource to a virtual assistant or bring someone in-house. Communicating boundaries and expectations, which I know we're always working on, whether it's managing your calendar, structuring your meetings, or really understanding if meetings are necessary and it can be converted into an email. But even email management and communicating boundaries and expectations with your clients, prospects, and your team. In addition, creating an AI strategy, if you're just getting started and reassessing it on a quarterly or semi-annual basis, this should also be done with your tech stack as well. So you can do all of them at the same time and really get an understanding of the value that each vendor has and brings to your workflow. Standardize what you will use AI for, document it, and communicate it to your team. And then after that, adopting an ongoing AI training program to make sure that you're regularly educated, especially since this space is constantly changing every single day, to make sure that you're staying up to date with what your vendors are providing and how you can adopt it into your existing practices. So for a few takeaways, we hope that you at least are able to implement one of the few that we'll mention between Cam and I. So the first, identify where you're spending a disproportionate amount of time. So a lot of the time, advisors come to us wanting to work with a virtual assistant for the first time, or just working with somebody for the first time, where they don't really have a full understanding of where that virtual assistant or that team member was even spending their time. If they've never worked with someone in that capacity before, they have no understanding of where their time is being spent. So really utilizing a time tracking tool for a month, it doesn't have to be forever, but it could best practice on an ongoing basis. And really looking at that time after the month ends and seeing what you really don't enjoy doing. Because even for some advisors where they had a full-time person or a part-time person and they're looking to bring someone new, they'll find that, oh, that full-time person actually didn't have to spend as much time on the work that they expected, or that part-time person was just working way too hard and they were just so efficient. So utilizing a tool like Toggle or Harvest, so there's so many other tools now because post-COVID and remote work, definitely is a great tool to look into.
Just to add to that, I would also look at the value of that time. It's something I do even with InvestaPal, but as a business owner yourself, is to quantify what your effective hourly rate is and see how much time and what the cost is of you spending that amount of time somewhere. And you can essentially look at it from like an ROI lens where maybe I'm spending a ton of time on client servicing or account opening. And does it make more sense to take that, let's call it $10,000 and hire on a VA, or invest that in a new technology so I can focus that time savings in on my sales process and building up my pipeline?
Another recommendation is to assess different ways to automate or augment these tasks. So if you are very new to AI and automation tools, uh, really just start from the very beginning and explore ChatGPT and Zapier, even if you want to explore it for personal reasons to see what you could possibly adopt into your business. But really utilizing the tools that provide minimal friction to your business and that are easy to adopt and don't require a huge overhaul of your existing workflows.
And to add on to that, there's high value activities and low value activities. To echo a previous point, like if you're spending a lot of time, this was firsthand experience from a lot of our clients on adding account statements or scanning account statements. Is there a software tool out there that can do this for me? And does that software tool integrate with my tech stack? If it does, then I'm again freeing up myself on that low value add to focus more in on my top of funnel strategy, making sure I'm building out my book, not wasting hours on end reading through different PDF reports.
And then lastly, rethinking your onboarding process to provide a quicker time to value. The most common scenario that I hear from advisors is that once I get all the clients that I need, I'm not in growth mode, I need to stop marketing and sales altogether, which we all know is not true. So with that, um, marketing is always going to be important, regardless if you are trying to attract leads, convert them into prospects, uh, having new clients, recruiting members for your team. So, because marketing is typically the area that advisors struggle with, and it's hard for advisors to identify the value just because they're unfamiliar with the space. I actually recommend adopting AI first into your marketing and sales strategy in numerous ways, whether it's through project planning, social media, video editing, podcast editing, copywriting, or even technical writing, and really start from there to make managing your marketing strategy a little less painful.
I think you raise a good point there, Michelle, where, if an advisor's hit a plateau, it's mainly because they don't have enough time to sink into onboarding new clients or servicing any extra clients. So, like, why is that? And usually it's the burden of having to spend a ton of time with them. And are there ways that you can automate the client servicing side? Like, can I share updates with them automatically? Should I hire on a support staff to help me with that? The other area, and I know this was like the top answer in the poll on people looking for help, was the sales side. And, back to that previous slide, time kills all deals. If you're not providing value out of the gate with that client, you're opening the door for them to want to look elsewhere. So it's the same thing with this question. It sounds like Investable helps with digital pre-onboarding. If you can change things up so that client is giving you information beforehand, before you ever sit down to chat, that means from the onset, you are providing value immediately. You're also simplifying your sales pipeline. You're going from 2 or 3 weeks to close a deal to a couple days. That's going to free you up quite a bit of time to, again, reinvest back into my sales strategy, reinvest back into my marketing strategy, because none of these things happen overnight. But it's just a trade-off that you have to reconcile with between, do I onboard new clients? Do I service new clients? Or am I completely overburdened and can't take on anything else?
Yeah, and I wanted to tie in the points that were made when a client works with an advisor because they trust the advisor, they're reliable and competent. Well, the deliverable that Investipel gives, it shows your competency when you're able to provide that value add up front. Because of speed, it shows you're reliable. And then it also, it's beautiful as well, where I think that plays into your digital marketing strategy.
So we really appreciate everyone listening to us for the past 40 minutes. As a thank you, and if anyone is interested in learning more about what we do, what Nifty does, just in summary, Investapal works. Our bread and butter is with the independent RIAs, helping you scale up your growth, whether that's pre-onboarding, whether it's marketing support, whether it's onboarding support and compliance management. We work with about 20 individual advisory firms rather. They're managing about 500 million through us. As a thank you, if you scan that QR code up here, Happy to either chat with myself or someone on the team. We can work with you, make sure we're setting you up for success. And as that thank you, if you mention Nifty or that you've attended this webinar, we'll give you 20% off that first year.
Lastly, if you decide to inquire with Nifty and you mention InvestApal rules, you'll get 10% off your first month if you sign up before July 31st, 2024. I am absolutely a champion of the RIA industry. We're a little over 6 years, but we've served hundreds of advisors across the United States, and our team is entirely remote, which allows us to tap into a great diverse pool of talent. And with our relationships, we are a talent and client experience solution where we leverage a lot of different pieces of technology where you don't have to pay for any training because that's something that we take on ourselves. We work with so many different advisors, solo, small, SEC registered, where, they're in a startup phase, they don't know what to do. They are in growth mode, so they need help with their marketing strategy. And then maybe they come a little bit more seasoned where they need servicing support, but then they kind of graduate from virtual assistants into our fractional recruiting program where we do help with the management of a in-house team or employee. So we're really your full talent solution with the expertise behind all these different fintech systems, best practices, and ways to really streamline your workflows and your business up front so you don't have to. So if you scan the QR code, it takes you directly to our inquiry form, and someone, whether it's myself or someone from our team, will be happy to speak with you.
Thank you everyone so much for joining today. We will be sending off a recording if you want to reference this. And then for anyone else, we are also having a webinar next week with 2 CFPs focused in on the marketing side and their marketing agency. So keep an eye out for that one. Michelle, thank you so much for today.
Thank you.
Okay, bye everyone.